Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. I tightened my grip on the champagne glass until it slipped. It hit the table, rang too loud, and every head turned. That was the second before I blew up my mom's party. I am Riley, 24, and I still feel it. Everyone went quiet so fast it felt like a trick. My mom already held the microphone, smile pinned in place. She lifted her glass higher like nothing strange had happened. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she started, voice bright. My pulse hammered so hard I could barely hear the words. I knew where this speech was going, and that scared me. Her fiancé stood beside her, hand resting on her shoulder. He looked proud, soft, like this was the safest place ever. His little girl leaned against the table, trying not to fidget. People around them looked happy and relaxed and ready to cheer. I felt like someone had pressed me against hot glass again. I never thought I'd get a second chance at a real family. That line landed harder than the glass I had just dropped. My jaw clenched so tight I thought a tooth might crack. Everyone nodded along, like this was sweet and inspiring and harmless. To me, it sounded like an eraser crushing my entire childhood. She kept talking, voice shaking in that half-emotional, half-rehearsed way. I was so lost back then, but now I am home. A few guests made soft noises, like they were touched by this. I stared at the microphone and tried to count my breaths. If I stayed seated, I knew I would swallow myself again. Then she said the words that set everything on fire. "These two are my only real family, my true beginning." Her hand squeezed his shoulder while she looked at his daughter. It was one line, one neat little sentence, and I snapped. My chair scraped back so loud it cut straight through her speech. "Are you serious right now?" The words jumped out before I could grab them back. Every conversation in the room died like someone killed the sound. My mom froze with the microphone halfway to her mouth. Dozens of faces twisted toward me, searching for the disaster. "Riley, sit down," she muttered, the smile still glued on. Her eyes did not match her voice at all, they never do. I stepped away from the table instead, legs buzzing from adrenaline. My heart felt like it was trying to climb out of my chest. I already knew I was not sitting down tonight. I heard my aunt whisper my name, warning tucked inside the sound. Someone near the DJ hissed something about "not now, not tonight." My mom angled her body slightly, like she could block me out. "Anyway," she said, trying to swallow the moment, as I was saying. That little rewrite of reality hit me harder than any insult. "As you were saying what?" I moved closer, palms sweating, fingertips tingling around the empty glass. My voice came out louder than I expected, edged with pure panic. A few people tried to laugh like this was some weird joke. Nobody actually thought it was funny, they just hoped it was. "This is not the time," she hissed, microphone still near her mouth. Her fiancé looked between us, confused, hands sliding off her shoulder. I caught his daughter's eyes and watched her shrink into herself. In another life, I might have backed off for that kid. In this one, I had finally hit my breaking point. "You don't get to stand there and erase me." My throat burned, but the words kept pouring out anyway. The staff near the bar glanced at each other and stepped forward. I noticed one of my cousins raise a phone, angle already perfect. Part of me wanted to smash the device, part of me didn't care. "Riley, please," my mom said, and her voice went soft again. She used that pleading tone that always made me feel unreasonable. She turned slightly toward the crowd, trying to shield them from me. "Sorry, everyone, my daughter gets overwhelmed at big events sometimes." That sentence hit like a slap in front of strangers. Overwhelmed. Like I was a small child who needed a nap and a snack. A murmur ran through the guests as they tried to process this. Some gave me sympathetic looks like I was fragile and unstable. She had them halfway on her side with one simple label. "I'm not overwhelmed." I stepped even closer, close enough to see her fingers shake. "I'm pissed that you called them your only real family." The word only tasted bitter, like poison that finally surfaced. Now the guests shifted, eyes sharpening, trying to follow the story. My aunt reached for my arm, nails digging just enough to sting. "Riley, not here," she whispered, breath hot against my ear. I shook her off harder than I meant, and she stumbled. A few people gasped like I had flipped a table or something. Apparently, moving your own arm is violence in those rooms. Look at me, I said, and my voice cracked on the last word. My mom kept her face turned toward the crowd like a host. Her free hand curled into a fist at her side, knuckles white. She always cared more about how things look than how they were. That was the moment I decided I would not protect her image. Finally, she turned, eyes wet, mouth trembling in that practiced way. Riley, honey, we can talk about this later, I promise. She reached out like she might touch my shoulder, gentle and shaky. I flinched back before she made contact, the reaction automatic now. A ripple went through the guests who saw that little flinch. There is no later for me here. I felt my voice steady even as my chest shook. You just told a room full of people I don't count. Silence thickened until you could almost hear people swallow their drinks. Every pair of eyes bounced between us like a tennis match. Her fiancé finally moved, stepping in front of the microphone a little. Maybe we should take a break, he said, hands raised slightly. He looked more nervous than angry, like this could be fixed. He glanced at my mom, then at me, trying to map the damage. He had no idea he was standing in a minefield. My mom gave him a tight nod, then turned the smile back on. Everyone, please enjoy the food, we'll be right back with you. Her voice wobbled just enough to look vulnerable, not enough to crack. A few people clapped quietly, like this was a performance break. I hated that she still knew how to play a crowd. She grabbed my wrist and dragged me toward a side hallway. My shoes slipped on the floor as I tried to keep up. I could still feel every pair of eyes drilling into my back. The music started again behind us, louder than before, desperate noise. They wanted to drown me out like I was background static. The hallway was narrow and empty, lined with closed doors. My mom spun around so fast I nearly crashed into her. What the hell are you doing? She hissed, eyes blazing now. No microphone, no guests, no soft tone, just raw fury. This was the version only I ever seemed to get. You seriously asked me that after what you just said? My voice dropped low and hoarse but steady for once. I felt my hands shaking and forced them into fists at my sides. I refused to look away first this time, even with my stomach twisting. She blinked like she had not expected me to stay standing. You are making a scene for nothing. She pointed back toward the party like that proved her point. I thanked people for coming and said I loved my fiancé. Her words came rapid and sharp like she wanted to puncture me. She left out the one line that had sliced me open. You called them your only family. I could hear my own breath, rough and uneven between syllables. You said this is your first real home, your real start. Each phrase tasted worse than the last, like swallowing glass again. For a second I thought I might throw up right there. She rolled her eyes, actually rolled them like I was overreacting. Oh my God, Riley, it was just a figure of speech, relax. There it was, the word that always set me on fire. Relax. I think that was the exact second I decided not to. People in there know me. I jabbed a finger toward the doorway, hand trembling with rage. They heard you pretend I'm some random guest from nowhere. My throat hurt, but I refused to lower my voice anymore. If she wanted quiet, she should have chosen different words earlier. You are twisting everything. Her voice climbed higher, that edge of panic starting to show. You show up late, you barely talk to anyone, then explode. She ticked the points off on her fingers, building a little case. I watched her build that narrative like she had done it before. Because you rewrote my life into a cute speech. My words came out flat now, less screaming, more razor calm. I saw something flicker across her face at that tone, something nervous. Voices from the party drifted down the hall, laughter forced and bright. The normal sounds of celebration felt almost obscene next to us. My aunt appeared at the end of the hallway, breathing slightly hard. She glanced from me to my mom like she walked into a disaster movie. Please, she said, people are asking questions, cameras are out, stop. The reminder of cameras made my stomach lurch like a fast elevator. I suddenly pictured my face online with some garbage caption. For a second I almost shut up. I almost swallowed it like I had done 1,000 times. I pictured going back inside, forcing a smile, letting it slide again. Then I thought about waking up tomorrow with that speech replaying everywhere. Her version of reality would become the only one anyone heard. No, I said, and the word came out steady and cold. I am not going back in there and pretending this is fine. My mom stared at me like I had just spoken another language. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, caught between anger and fear. She was finally realizing I was not bluffing this time. We can talk about it later, my aunt tried again, voice pleading. Later sounded like a locked door that would never open. I shook my head once sharp, like I could knock the word off. If I walk back in there, I become the crazy one forever. That was the part that scared me more than any shouting. My mom stepped closer until we were almost nose to nose. You are already making yourself look unstable, she whispered, breath shaking. If you leave now, everyone will think you are the problem. Her eyes searched my face like she could still direct this scene. I realized she cared more about their opinion than my sanity. If I stay, you win the story. I said it before I fully understood what I meant. Her gaze hardened like I had hit the center of something true. Behind her, I saw my aunt's shoulders slump like she knew too. Nobody answered, and that silence told me everything. Voices swelled again from the main room, someone calling for a toast. They were ready to move on, pretend nothing serious had happened. Maybe they thought we were having some emotional family moment back here. They would clap when my mom walked back in with tearful eyes. I would just be the storm that passed through and vanished. I straightened up and loosened my grip on the empty glass. I'm leaving, I said, and this time nobody tried to stop me. My mom reached out halfway, then dropped her hand, fingers curling in. She looked smaller for one split second, then the mask slid back. I turned away before I could start feeling guilty again. As I stepped out of the hallway, chatter dipped, then shifted. People pretended to look anywhere except directly at my face. I saw my cousin lower her phone, screen still glowing with video. The DJ watched me pass, unsure whether to lower the music. The whole room felt like a stage I had just walked off. At the door, I risked one look back. My mom stood in the entry of the hallway, wiping her eyes. Her fiancé hovered near her, already wrapping an arm around her shoulders. She tilted her face up toward him, grief painted in careful strokes. I knew that image would be the one everyone remembered. I walked out into the night with my heart still pounding. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the glass again. Outside, the sounds from the party dulled into a messy blur. I had no idea what story she would tell them after I left. I only knew I had finally told mine out loud. My phone started vibrating before the sun was even up. Short bursts at first, then nonstop like it was trying to escape. I watched it buzz across the nightstand and thought about throwing it. For a few seconds I just lay there and counted the vibrations. I already knew every notification was about last night. Finally I grabbed it. Lock screen stacked with alerts from 3 different apps. Missed calls from my aunt, my grandmother, 2 numbers I did not recognize. Group chats lit up with previews like little landmines. I opened the family thread and let the messages hit. What happened? Tell me this is exaggerated. Your mother is devastated. Screens of gray and blue bubbles piling on top of each other. Nobody asked if I was okay before asking what I did. I scrolled up. Someone had dropped a link to a short clip. I tapped it and my own voice came out of the speakers. There I was standing near the front, shoulders stiff, glass in hand. You could hear me asking if she was serious over the music. The angle was bad, catching my face mid-shout. My expression looked wild, eyes too bright, mouth sharp and twisted. The caption under the video took the knife and twisted harder. Girl loses it at her mom's engagement dinner, followed by laughing emojis. Underneath, comments were already forming like mold. Yikes. She could have waited until after dessert. That poor woman, imagine your kid ruining that moment. Not one person under that clip knew any context. They did not seem to care there might be more to it. I backed out of the video and my stomach lurched. My grandmother had sent one message, just one, but it burned. Call me as soon as you see this. No question mark, no extra words, just pressure packed into a line. I knew that tone even through text, and it made my chest tighten. Another alert flashed at the top of the screen. Mom's fiancé had posted photos from the party, smiling and neat. People had already started leaving supportive comments under the set. I clicked through until I found the caption my mother wrote. It was long enough to feel like a speech and not long enough to include me. Last night was one of the best moments of my life. She talked about love, growth, healing, second chances, all the usual words. She thanked friends for showing up and called him her rock. She mentioned how unexpected drama had popped up but labeled it growing pains. At the end, she wrote that she was beyond grateful for her real family. Real family. That phrase had gotten her into this mess, and she still used it. No mention of having another child in the room at all. If you read that post, you would think I never existed. I felt heat crawl up my neck even though I was alone. A text from my aunt came in while I stared at the screen. Pick up the phone or I'm coming over. Her contact photo flashed like a warning light. I hit call before I could talk myself out of it. She answered on the first ring, breath already fast. What were you thinking? No hello, no pause, just that. I pushed myself upright and pressed the phone hard to my ear. What do you mean, what was I thinking? I asked. My voice came out rough, like I had been screaming in my sleep. You humiliated your mother in front of everyone. She muffled the receiver for a second and murmured at someone. Background noise told me she was not alone, which made this worse. People are talking, Riley, and it does not look good. Her use of my name felt like a scolding more than a connection. Did you even hear what she said about me? My hands were sweaty, fingers sliding on the phone case. I was there, she replied, and I heard a chair scrape behind her. You walked out and left her sobbing in a hallway. She stressed, walked out like that was the real crime. I left so I would not say more, I shot back. I knew my tone was sharp, but I did not soften it. She called them her only real family like I was nothing. There was a small silence on the other end, just a breath. Then she went straight back to managing optics. She was nervous and misspoke. My aunt's voice lost patience, gained steel instead. She was trying to honor them, and you made it about you. I heard a door shut on her side like she moved for privacy. Everyone saw you yelling while she tried to calm you down. That word again. Calm. I closed my eyes, fingers digging into the blanket. Of course that is how it looks if you skip everything else, I said. My heartbeat pounded in my neck, loud enough to feel each thud. I am not saying you do not have feelings. She lowered her volume, almost a whisper now. But you could have waited until the night was over to address it. Her words stacked into that neat little phrase, could have waited. As if timing mattered more than what was said. If I waited, she would pretend it never happened. The truth of that dropped between us like a weight. On the line, she blew out a long breath, tired and conflicted. Maybe, she admitted, and that tiny word shocked me. Still, now the only thing anyone remembers is you yelling. I pulled the phone away and stared at the screen for a second. That is not my fault, I said, bringing it back to my ear. They filmed me, posted it, spun it however they wanted. My throat tightened as I remembered that caption again. I suddenly felt sick all over. You know how this goes, my aunt replied, voice gentle now. The clip without context travels faster than any explanation. I could tell she believed she was being realistic, not cruel. If you do not get ahead of it, her version sticks. Her version, those two words sat like poison in my mouth. What is her version? I asked, even though I already guessed. She told a few people you have been distant and struggling lately. Of course, she framed it like concern, not blame, classic move. She said the stress got to you and you lashed out. I had to laugh at that because the alternative was crying. Struggling, I repeated, letting the word roll around. She say with what? My aunt hesitated, which told me I was not going to enjoy the answer. That you have trouble handling big emotions and conflict. More buzzes hit my phone in quick succession while she spoke. People reacting to her post, to the video, to each other. An entire narrative was forming without me in the room. She makes it sound like I am unstable for existing, I blurted. The rawness in my voice caught even me off guard. I am not defending everything she said, my aunt replied. I just want you to understand why people look at you sideways. She sounded worn down, like she had run this marathon before. Can you at least stay off social media for a while? That request hit a different nerve. Why should I disappear when she is out there performing? My jaw ached as I clenched it, trying not to shout again. So I looked guilty while she posts about healing and growth. I pictured all the comments under her caption cheering her on. My stomach twisted hard enough to hurt. You do what you want, my aunt said, resignation creeping in. Just know there is already talk about you needing help. The word help dragged a long shadow behind it. I heard someone call her name in the background, sharp and urgent. I have to go, please do not make things worse today. She ended the call before I could answer. I stared at the call-ended screen until it faded. Another text popped up immediately, from my grandmother this time. Church friends have seen the video, call me. That mix of faith and disappointment was a familiar punch. I did not call her. Instead, I opened the clip again and watched myself. This time I kept the sound low and focused on the visuals. Mom's face in the background, hand reaching out, eyes wide. In that frame I did look unhinged. That is the part that got to me. From a distance, without context, I looked exactly like the problem. The video cut right after I walked off toward the hallway. Nobody filmed the discussion back there where things actually cracked. Of course they did not. Conflict without nuance travels better. A notification banner slid across the top of the screen. New comment under Mom's engagement photos. You handled everything with such grace, some people do not appreciate blessings. Another answer underneath, that one from a mutual acquaintance. She will come around, kids act out but love wins. Love wins. I dropped the phone onto the bed and pressed my palms over my eyes. For a second I considered just sending a mass message. One long explanation with every detail, no filter, full truth. Then I pictured it getting screenshotted and laughed at in private chats. I picked up the phone again and opened Mom's direct thread. Our last exchange before the party was short, polite, surface level. She had sent me the dress code, a few smiley emojis, nothing deep. Now there were new messages stacked under that, all from overnight. I tapped into them with my chest already tight. I am heartbroken about last night. I know you are hurting, but you attacked me when I was vulnerable. You embarrassed me in front of people who have supported me for years. I have never given up on you, but you are pushing me away. Please apologize so we can move forward and heal as a family. Each sentence built her framework brick by brick. She was the wounded one, brave and patient, hurt by my cruelty. I was the unstable daughter who could not control herself in public. Reading it, I could see how many people would nod along. It sounded measured enough to seem reasonable. A new bubble appeared while I was still rereading her words. She was typing again. Also, your meltdown scared his child, she did nothing to you. That line landed in a different place, somewhere deep in my chest. She knew exactly which guilt lever to pull. I stared at the keyboard and my thumbs hovered above it. I wanted to type 100 things at once. You erased me. You called them your only real family. You are not the only one allowed to be wounded. Instead, I just wrote one short sentence. Stop lying about what happened. I watched the blue bubble hang there for a beat. Then I hit send before I could rethink it. My heart hammered while the small delivered note appeared. Her reply came in under a minute, faster than I expected. Excuse me. Just those 2 words, full of offense and disbelief. Another message followed seconds later. Tell me exactly what I am lying about. This was the trap. Spell it out in text, hand her lines to twist back later. Show my anger in writing so she could screenshot that instead. I forced myself to breathe and put the phone down for a second. My hand still shook even though the room was quiet. I picked it up again and typed slower. You told people I had some random breakdown from stress. You left out what you said during the toast that triggered it. You keep calling them your only real family and calling me unstable. Those are lies, or at least very convenient edits. I deleted and retyped twice before sending those lines. Part of me wanted to be harsher, more vicious, uglier. Part of me still hoped there was a version where she understood. Her response came back longer this time, a full block of text. I read each word with my jaw locked. I did not call you unstable. I told people you have been distant and going through things. I am allowed to celebrate my life without walking on eggshells. I will not be bullied in my own home again. If you cannot be happy for me, maybe it is better you stay away. There it was. She never said unstable, just made sure everyone pictured it. She never said crazy, just talked about my difficulty with emotions. She never said abandoned, but she sure knew how to push me out. All while claiming the high ground and holding a tissue. My screen lit with another incoming call while I stared at her message. Unknown number again, same one from the missed calls overnight. I almost declined out of reflex. On the third ring I answered and lifted it slowly to my ear. A male voice came through, careful and quiet. Riley, it is Mark. For a moment I did not place the name. Then it clicked, my mother's fiancé. He rarely reached out to me directly before, hardly ever used my number. Something about his tone made my lungs tighten. I hope this is not a bad time. I laughed once, short and humorless. Every time was a bad time that morning. What do you want? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. In the back row. And I heard muffled sounds, maybe dishes or movement. I wanted to check on you. He paused like he knew how that sounded after last night. And I wanted to talk about what happened if you are open. He had picked his words very carefully, every syllable measured. I could practically hear him weighing loyalty against curiosity. So which is it? I asked. Concern check or damage control? Silence held for 3 whole beats. Maybe both, he admitted. That honesty caught me off guard more than any excuse would have. He cleared his throat, a small nervous sound. She has been crying nonstop since we got home. Of course that was his first data point. She feels like you attacked her for no reason in front of everyone. I felt my teeth grind together at that. She told you it was for no reason. I did not bother to hide the disbelief. He hesitated again, and I realized he was not used to this kind of tension. She said she might have worded some things badly. There it is, I muttered under my breath. What did you hear? He asked, tone softer now. What did it sound like from where you were standing? I could picture him replaying the moment, trying to be fair. Maybe he actually wanted to know, or maybe he just wanted peace. Either way, this was the first time someone asked me directly. I opened my mouth, then shut it. Backstory wanted to pour out, but I stopped it at the edge. He did not get the whole lifetime story in a morning call. You heard her say who counts, I answered instead. And you saw who stormed off, that is enough for now. On his end, a long exhale. I saw her make a mess of a sentence during an emotional toast. I saw you react like someone who had been holding something heavy. That line hung between us, more accurate than he probably realized. For a flash, I almost told him everything. I am not going to argue with you over the phone. I rubbed my temple, trying to ease the pounding there. Whatever version she fed you, she believes it. She always does. That last part slipped out before I could stop it. He latched onto that. What do you mean always? There it was again, the door to my whole history. I could feel it swinging open in his mind, waiting for details. I closed it for now. That is not a 30-minute chat conversation. My voice dropped, less rage, more exhaustion. And definitely not while she is in the next room. I listened for any hint of her voice near him. He went quiet, which told me enough. You are right, he finally said. This is not the moment to unpack everything. I just wanted you to know I am not writing you off. He sounded sincere and conflicted and out of his depth. I might reach out again if that is okay. I stared at the wall while he spoke. Something about that offer felt like a thin rope thrown across a gap. I cannot promise I will pick up every time, I answered. But I will not block you. That was as close to an invitation as I could give him. After the call ended, the room felt heavier. I set the phone down in the middle of the bed. For a long minute I just looked at it, screen dark, silent. The quiet actually bothered me more than the buzzing did. Because I knew it would not last. Somewhere across town, she was already revising the story again. Tuning the details for whoever asked, trimming anything that made her look bad. Crying at the right moments, explaining my outburst with kind-sounding words. By the end of the week, most people would know only that version. I realized if I wanted my side to exist, I would have to write it myself. The first thing I remember is the wheels of her suitcase bumping over the doorway. My father stood in front of it with his hands open, breathing hard. "You're really doing this?" he asked, voice so tight it almost squeaked. Mom did not answer him, she focused on the handle and the door. I stood in the hallway clutching a homework folder like that could stop anything. "Go to your room, Riley." She said it without even looking at me, like I was background sound. My throat locked, but my feet did not move toward the bedroom. Dad stepped sideways and blocked the suitcase again, shoulders hunched. "That's our kid," he muttered like she had somehow forgotten. "I am not leaving her." Mom finally glanced at me, eyes glossy and bright. "I just need space, I need time to figure things out." Her fingers tightened on the handle like she might crush the plastic. I didn't know that space could stretch for years. Dad laughed once, harsh, nothing funny in it. "Space with your friend from the office," he threw back. Her jaw clenched, and for a second I thought she would drop the bag. Instead, she reached for her car keys and turned her face toward me. "Sweetheart, I'll come get you this weekend, we'll have fun, okay?" That promise slid into my head and lodged there. I nodded because my tongue felt thick and useless. She bent down fast, kissed my forehead, eyes already on the door. "I love you," she whispered, like that covered every line she crossed. Then the suitcase bumped down the steps and the door shut behind her. The house sounded wrong after that. My father leaned his back against the closed door and slid down. He didn't cry like in movies, he just stared at the floor and breathed. I stood 3 feet away, still holding the folder, waiting for instructions. Nobody gave me any, so I sat down too and watched his hands shake. At 11, I decided she was still my parent because she said so. I circled Saturday on the calendar with a bright marker, big loop. Every day that week I checked it, like that could keep it in place. Dad worked late and came home quiet, moving slower than usual. We both pretended nothing permanent had happened yet. Saturday finally landed, and I woke up way before sunrise. I sat on the edge of the couch with my shoes already on. The digital clock climbed and climbed, numbers changing while nothing else did. By lunchtime, Dad came in and ruffled my hair, eyes rimmed red. "If she's running behind, she'll call," he murmured, voice flat. She did not call. I watched him check his phone every few minutes anyway. Once he stepped outside to dial her number, shoulders tense and drawn. He came back in a few minutes later, jaw set, phone face down. "Maybe something came up at work," he offered too fast. By evening, the hope felt sour in my stomach. I peeled off my shoes and crawled onto the couch under a blanket. Dad put on some loud show and pretended to watch it. Neither of us talked about the empty driveway or the unanswered calls. I went to bed that night still half expecting a car horn. The next weekend, she did show up. She swept in late with a big grin and a bag I recognized from our closet. "Traffic was insane," she announced, dropping her keys on the counter. She hugged me so tight my arms couldn't move, like that fixed everything. "Next time I'll be on time, Scout's honor." I did not know what a Scout's honor meant, but I believed it. We spent the day at a mall and ate fries in the food court. She bought me a hoodie I did not need, extra large. "See, I told you I'd be here," she laughed, bumping my shoulder. On the drive back, she promised the next trip would be even better. That was the pattern for a while. Sometimes she came, sometimes she did not, always with a reason. A flat tire, a coworker emergency, a migraine, a lost phone. One missed weekend turned into 2, then 3, the excuses piling up. Each time I swallowed it, told myself adults were complicated. The first time I saw proof of her new life, it hit weird. A cousin flashed her phone at me during a family barbecue. "Your mom posted this," she said like it was no big deal. On the screen, Mom posed beside a guy I had never seen before. Her caption called him her favorite person in the world. I stared at that phrase until the letters blurred. I did not say anything, just handed the phone back very carefully. Later that night, I checked Mom's social page on the old computer. There were whole albums I had never heard about, trips and dinners. My name did not appear under any of the smiling photos. She still texted me sometimes. Short notes about being busy but thinking of me, heart emojis. Rain check this weekend, baby, promise I'll make it up to you. When I tried to call, it went to voicemail more often than not. Her voice on the recording sounded cheerful and distant. By middle school, I stopped circling weekends on calendars. Birthdays, though, still felt like they should count for something. One year she swore she'd be there, no matter what, count on it. I invited 3 friends over and saved her a chair at the table. Every time the doorbell rang, my chest jumped. She did not walk through that door. My friends sang awkwardly, then went home with tight smiles. Dad cleaned up slowly, lips pressed together, hands moving on autopilot. What did she say? I finally asked, voice small from holding it in. He wiped his face with his wrist before answering. She called during your candles, he muttered, eyes on the sink. Work emergency again. He picked up the abandoned gift bag she had mailed earlier in the week. Inside was a generic card with a rushed note and $50. Buy yourself something fun, we'll celebrate properly soon, she'd written. That night I stared at my phone until my eyes stung. I played her voicemail twice, listening for any hint of regret. It was just her usual bright tone, apologetic but detached. By the time I lay down, something inside me had shifted. I decided next year I would not plan around her voice. The worst part is that I still checked my messages first thing. Hope is stubborn, it sticks even when you know better. She would pop up once in a while with cheerful updates. A new promotion, a short trip, a fancy dinner, always upbeat. She treated me like a pen pal and not a child she used to tuck in. The first I heard about her having another kid was by accident. A girl from school waved her phone at me in the hallway. Hey, isn't this your mom? She asked, curiosity all over her face. I glanced and froze. Mom cradled a newborn, cheeks flushed, caption calling the baby her entire universe. My ears buzzed so loud I barely caught my friend's next words. She looks so happy, that's so cute, she gushed. I forced a smile and handed the phone back, fingers stiff. In the bathroom, I locked myself in a stall and sat on the toilet lid. I scrolled through Mom's page and counted the photos where I had never been mentioned. She had posted about cravings, baby showers, nursery decorations. Everyone congratulated her, told her she would be an amazing parent. Nobody in those comments knew I existed. Or maybe they did and just kept quiet. For the first time, I wondered if she had told people she had just one child. After that, her messages changed tone. She still wrote to me, but there were more gaps between them. When she did reach out, it was usually a short picture of the baby. Your little sister misses you, she'd type like we actually knew each other. Each text felt like an invitation and a dare at the same time. My father did not say much about any of this. He worked double shifts and came home worn out, jacket hanging off one shoulder. If I showed him something from her page, he would grunt and look away. Once, though, he cracked. He came home smelling like outside air and hospital disinfectant. I was doing homework at the table when he dropped into a chair. His hands pressed against his chest like he was trying to hold it together. You okay? I asked, pushing my books aside. He nodded, then shook his head, breathing uneven. I think I need a doctor, he finally admitted. We spent that night in a waiting room, fluorescent and too bright. A nurse guided him through a doorway, leaving me with a vending machine and my thoughts. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Mom's contact, thumb hovering. If your co-parent is in the hospital, you call the other one, right? That is what I told myself as I pressed the call button. It rang and rang, then flipped to voicemail. I hung up without leaving a message, then tried again. Second time, same thing. Third time, her recorded voice kicked in and I let it play. By the fourth attempt, I dropped the phone in my lap and stared at the ceiling. He came home with a handful of prescriptions and strict instructions. On the drive back, I told him I had tried to reach her. Don't bother, he muttered, leaning his head against the window. If she wanted to be here, she would be here. The way he said it sliced deeper than the hospital visit. His health did not bounce back the way I convinced myself it would. He started taking more breaks, sitting more, moving less. A role slowly reversed without anyone announcing it. I cooked simple meals while he rested with the television murmuring in the background. If I mentioned calling her, his mouth tightened. Then one afternoon, the phone buzzed while I was at a friend's house. Unknown number, but with our area code, so I answered on instinct. "Is this Riley?" a clipped voice asked. When I said yes, the caller drew in a sharp breath. "I'm calling from the hospital. Your father was brought in earlier today." The room around me blurred. I remember grabbing my backpack and mumbling something to my friend. The drive over is just shards in my memory now. Walking into the building, the smell of antiseptic, the steady beeping. A nurse met me near the entrance and gently guided me to a chair. By the time someone finally sat down with me, I already knew. They used words like "we tried" and "couldn't stabilize him" and "I'm sorry." My hands went numb, but my eyes stayed dry, like my body refused to cooperate. They asked if there was another parent they could call. I pulled out my phone and stared at Mom's contact again. I texted her this time, fingers clumsy. "Dad is gone, they did everything, he's gone." I watched the little delivered note appear under the message. Minutes ticked by, each one stretching longer than the last. No response came. Hours later, when I was back home with my grandmother hovering nearby, my phone buzzed. It was from her. "Just seeing this now, I'm so sorry to hear. I can't be around that situation, it's too hard on me." That was the entire message. No offer to come over, no plan, just a wall. I showed the text to my grandmother, hand trembling. Her mouth tightened, but she did not say anything for a long moment. Finally, she looked at me and nodded toward the hallway. "Pack some things," she said quietly. "You're staying with me now." The funeral came fast. I stood in the front row between my grandmother and my aunt. Every time the back doors opened, my head snapped that way. I half expected Mom to rush in late, breathless, apologizing. The doors kept swinging, but she never walked through them. After the service, people came up and squeezed my shoulders. "He would be proud of you. If you need anything, you know where we are." I thanked them and glanced over their heads at the entrance again. Each time, it was just another neighbor with a casserole. Later that night, I saw fresh activity on her profile. Not about him, not about me, nothing about loss. She had posted a photo from a playground, her new child on a swing. Caption: "Holding my world a little closer today." 9 heart emojis, 3 comments about how blessed she was. That was the moment the story in my head shifted. Up until then, I kept telling myself she was struggling. Busy, confused, overwhelmed, whatever language made it easier to forgive. Staring at that post while wearing black clothes from the service, I ran out of excuses. She had chosen where to show up, and it was not here. Moving in with my grandmother felt less like an event and more like surrender. We loaded boxes into her car while the sun ducked behind the trees. I slipped my father's old jacket into the backseat, hidden under blankets. My phone buzzed once, a short message from Mom. "Let me know if you need anything," she wrote, as if that meant something. I did not answer her that day. I shoved the phone into my pocket and closed the car door. From the sidewalk, I looked back at the house that had held us together. Every window reflected the sky, no sign of either parent inside now. That empty feeling from the front row at the funeral settled in for good. His text came while I was still staring at her last message. "Can we meet somewhere public to talk, just us?" My first instinct was to throw the phone across the room. Instead, I watched the typing dots vanish and reappear, like he was nervous. I already knew saying yes would drag everything into the open. I read it 3 more times before answering. "Where?" He replied almost instantly, like he'd been waiting with the app open. "Coffee place on Oak, tomorrow afternoon, whatever time works for you." I agreed before I could overthink it and hate myself into silence. My grandmother noticed me pacing the hallway that night. "You look like you're about to jump out of your skin," she muttered. I told her he wanted to talk and waited for the lecture. She folded a dish towel slowly while she thought. "Go," she finally said, "but keep your eyes wide open." The next day my hands shook all the way there. On the bus, I kept rehearsing lines in my head. "Don't be too angry. Don't overshare. Don't let him turn you into a cautionary tale." The shop buzzed with noise when I walked in. People talked over each other, machines whined, chairs scraped. I spotted him at a table near the window, hands around a cup. He looked up, eyes tired, shoulders dropped like he hadn't slept. He lifted one hand in a small, unsure wave. I crossed the room and sat opposite him, heart racing. For a second neither of us spoke, just fidgeted with our drinks. "You came," he said quietly, fingers tapping the paper sleeve. "Yeah," I answered, voice rougher than I meant it to sound. It seemed worse to stay home and imagine this conversation. He glanced around like he wanted to be sure no one listened. "I don't want this to feel like an ambush," he started. "I also don't want to pretend nothing happened the other night." His eyes met mine and didn't slide away, which surprised me. Most adults in my life preferred looking anywhere else. "I'm guessing she gave you her version already." I leaned back a little, testing how honest I wanted to be. His jaw tightened very slightly, just enough for me to notice. "She told me you're in a lot of pain and it spilled out." He added that she had been crushed by what I did in front of everyone. There it was again. Pain as explanation, not context. "She say why I might be in pain?" I asked, keeping my voice level. He hesitated, thumb rubbing a line on the cup. "She said she and your father had a difficult situation and you blame her." I laughed once, short and sharp enough to make him flinch. "Right," I muttered, staring at the table between us. "So in her story, I'm just holding a grudge for sport." He didn't rush to correct me, which told me he'd wondered that himself. He just watched me like he was waiting for something to crack. "I didn't ask you here to interrogate you," he added. I asked because that scene didn't look like simple drama. He shifted in his chair, leaning forward with his elbows near the edge. "You looked like somebody who had just hit the limit." Hearing that almost knocked the air out of me. I pulled my phone from my pocket and set it down. "Okay," I said, fingers hovering over the screen. "If you actually want my side, I'll show you, not just tell." A tiny part of me wanted him to refuse and go hide. Instead, he nodded once, slow, like he was bracing for impact. I opened my message thread with her and slid the phone over. "Scroll back," I told him, tapping near the top. "See how far you go before you find a reply from her." He looked confused for a second, then started dragging upward. His brows drew together almost immediately. Each flick of his thumb revealed older texts. My words stacked there year after year like a one-person chatroom. Short check-ins, holiday greetings, awkward jokes, invitations. I didn't watch the screen, I watched his face as he read. His shoulders sank a little more with each movement. At one point he stopped and squinted at the dates. "These are all from," he murmured, then cut himself off. He scrolled further until the timestamps changed to a different year. "How old were you here?" he asked, eyes still on the screen. His voice sounded different now, thinner, like he'd been hit. I swallowed hard. "You're holding messages from before high school," I answered. "You see any responses from her in that section?" He slid his thumb across the glass again, slower this time. Silence stretched out between us while he kept searching. He finally found one. A single bubble from her, sent after a long gap. He read it under his breath. "Sorry, things are crazy this month, let's plan something soon." Then nothing for months after that. He locked the phone without meaning to, then unlocked it again. "You reached out way more than she mentioned," he said quietly. "She told me you weren't open to a relationship for a long time." He stared down at the table, fingertips pressing into the cardboard. I believed her because I never saw anything to contradict it. "I know how convincing she can be," I said. "She's charming when she wants to be, very careful with wording." I watched him absorb that, watched him replay the speeches in his head. "You've heard the polished version of her life for years. You're just seeing the outtakes now." He winced at that, like the word hit a nerve. "She talks about you like she lost you," he admitted. "Like she tried and you pushed her away over and over." He looked up at me, searching my face for some overlap. "I didn't know there was this much history in your phone." "Those texts aren't even the worst part," I said. I leaned forward and tapped near the middle of the thread. "Check around the date of my father's funeral." My voice shook on that word, but I kept going. "I want you to see how she handled that." He scrolled to the search bar and typed the month. The thread jumped to that section instantly. A cluster of messages from me sat there, all sent within hours. He read them, eyes moving quickly, lips pressed together. Then he froze on the one I knew would bother him most. "You told her what happened that day," he whispered. He glanced at me, then back at the screen, then again. "And she wrote back this." He read her reply, the one about not being able to handle that situation. His eyes closed for a moment like he needed to shut everything out. I knew he was picturing his own child in that scenario. His jaw clenched, the muscle ticking near his ear. "I'm not saying she doesn't hurt," I added, voice low. "I'm just saying she chose where to show up and where not to." It felt weird defending her feelings while also tearing down her image. He set the phone down gently between us and laced his fingers. "I knew pieces," he murmured, staring at his hands. "She told me there were mistakes with your dad, that things ended badly." He swallowed hard, throat working like the words tasted sour. "She didn't mention ignoring you when he passed." "Of course she didn't," I said. "She edits her own story without even realizing she's doing it." I let out a laugh that sounded more like a cough. "Then when you confront her, she acts shocked at the missing scenes." I hated how bitter I sounded, even though it was honest. He looked up again, eyes shining in a way that made me uncomfortable. "How long have you carried this around?" he asked. I exhaled slowly, counting the years in my head without saying them. "Long enough that I thought I was crazy for being upset," I answered. "Long enough that watching her toast felt like watching someone erase me in real time." He flinched at that description, even though I kept it vague. "I need to ask you something hard," he said after a moment. "If you knew all this, why go to the engagement party at all?" His tone wasn't accusing, more like he truly wanted to understand. Still, the question stung. "I went because she asked and made it sound important," I replied. She framed it like this big step toward blending things. I picked at the edge of my napkin, tearing small strips. "I thought maybe if I showed up and played nice, it meant something." Then she got up and talked like I'd never existed. He rubbed his forehead with his fingers, slow, dragging movement. "I heard the toast," he admitted, eyes on the table. "I heard the line about only having her real family there." He winced as he repeated it, like tasting something spoiled. "At the time, I just assumed she meant me and my daughter." "Of course you did," I said. "Why would you assume anything else if you didn't know me?" I wasn't even mad at him for that part, not really. From your seat, I probably looked unhinged, attacking a happy moment. It was painful how much sense that version made from far away. He looked at me, really looked like he wanted to check something. "You didn't look unhinged," he answered to my surprise. "You looked like you were on fire, like you'd rehearsed staying quiet and finally failed." His voice dropped at the end, almost apologetic for saying it. "That's why I wanted to see you, not just take one version as gospel." Hearing that did something strange to my chest. Most of the time, people just called me dramatic and stopped there. "You know she'll say you're being manipulated if you believe any of this," I warned. "She'll spin it like I'm out to break you two up." I knew that narrative by heart before she even built it. He let out a breath that sounded more like a laugh. "She already tried," he admitted, giving a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. "She called this meeting a mistake before it even happened." He lifted his cup again, then set it down untouched. That almost made me want to come more. We sat in silence for a few seconds, just listening to the noise around us. "I need you to understand something too," he said finally. "She isn't a cartoon villain in my head, she's good to us most days." He said it like he was defending a friend on trial. "I've seen her be patient and kind in ways that feel real." "I believe that," I answered, and I meant it. "That's what makes this so confusing, not just for you." I traced a line on the tabletop with my fingertip. "She's not a monster, she's a person who made choices that wrecked me and benefited her." Both things sat there in the air between us. He nodded slowly, eyes distant now. "So if she's both, where does that leave you and me?" The way he said "me" told me he was finally including himself in the fallout. "I'm the guy who bought the ring based on one story." The weight of that seemed to land on him all at once. I thought about softening it, offering some comforting line. Instead, I went with the thing that felt true. It leaves you with information you didn't have when you proposed. I held his gaze so he knew I wasn't enjoying this. Whatever you do with it is on you, not on me. He stared at the phone again like it might move on its own. Can I send myself some of these? He asked, almost sheepish. Not to share, I just don't trust my memory right now. That level of caution actually impressed me. Go ahead, I answered, nudging the phone toward him. He forwarded a couple of screenshots to his number. He picked ones that showed the long gaps in her brief, polished replies. No commentary, no additions, just raw timestamps and words. When his device chimed in his pocket, he jumped a little. I'm going to read them again later when my head clears. After that, the conversation shifted in a way I didn't expect. He asked about small things, details, not big speeches. How old were you when she moved out? How often did she come around before I entered the picture? I gave short, clean answers, nothing extra, nothing meant to sway. At one point, he leaned back and scrubbed his hands over his face. None of this matches the way she tells it, he muttered. In her version, she was constantly blocked and rejected. He let his hands drop and looked at me again, eyes red-rimmed. I never thought to ask how a kid blocks their own parent. That line hit me harder than I was ready for. She's told the same story so many times she believes it, I said. It's easier than sitting with what she actually did. I took a breath and tried to loosen my shoulders. And to be fair, I've told my own side so often in my head I sound extreme too. There it was, the part where I admit I'm not spotless. I know I detonated that party, I added, staring at my hands. I could have left quietly, talked to her the next day, sent an email. I felt my throat tightening as the alternatives lined up. But I didn't, I lost it in front of everybody she knew. He nodded, not in agreement, more in understanding. Do you regret it? He asked, voice steady, eyes on me. That specific way you did it, I mean. My fingers curled into fists under the table where he couldn't see. I'd asked myself that same question about 100 times already. I regret giving her an easy way to dismiss me, I said. She can point at the video and say, look, see, unstable. I drew in a slow breath, feeling my chest expand against the tension. But I don't regret finally pushing back on that speech. If I'd stayed quiet, I'd be the ghost she wanted me to be. He watched me for a long moment after that answer. Then he glanced toward the door like he was calculating the next step. I think we both know this can't stay between us, he said. She's going to ask what we talked about as soon as I walk in. His mouth twisted like that thought almost made him nauseous. You don't have to quote me, I replied. You can tell her it was mostly about how upset I am. Technically true and vague enough to keep me out of fresh trouble. And that you asked me to be respectful going forward. He raised an eyebrow at that little assist. Are you going to be, he asked, one corner of his mouth lifting. Respectful, I mean. I let out a breath that was almost a laugh. I'm going to try not to throw any more grenades in public, I shrugged. That's the best I can promise right now. He leaned forward again, elbows on his knees this time. I'd like you to be in her life if that can ever be healthy. He said it carefully, like he knew how loaded it was. And I'd like my kid to know you without being stuck in the middle. The hope in his voice made my stomach twist. I'm not going to drag your daughter into this, I said quickly. She didn't do anything wrong except exist where I used to. It hurt to say it out loud, but it was the truth. If she ever reaches out, I'll be honest without trashing her mom. That commitment felt heavy and weirdly protective. He nodded slowly, taking that in. You're a lot more measured than the video makes you look, he said. I almost told him he was seeing the cleaned-up cut now. Instead, I picked up my drink and took a long swallow. Everyone's more complicated than a 20-second clip, I answered. We sat there longer than I expected, just letting the dust settle. When we finally stood up, he looked older than when I arrived. At the door, he paused like he wanted to say something else. If I ask her to sit down with both of us, will you come? He asked. The question hung there between us like a live wire. My first reaction was a full-body no. I pictured her in a chair across from me, eyes shining, voice shaking. I pictured myself shrinking or screaming, nothing in between. Maybe, I answered after too long because I couldn't say yes or no. Depends which version of her shows up that day. He seemed to understand more than I expected. I'll reach out again once I figure out what to do with all this, he said. His hand hovered near my shoulder for a second, then dropped. I'm sorry you had to shove your pain in my face for me to see it. That apology landed deeper than anything she'd texted. After he left, I stayed near the door and watched him cross the street. He moved like someone whose legs didn't fully trust the ground. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a new notification lighting the screen. Part of me already knew who it was before I pulled it out. Mom's name sat there with a fresh message waiting to be opened. Her message hit my screen before I even took my shoes off. Mark told me you met, we need to talk, all three of us. My fingers tightened around the phone so hard my knuckles hurt. I stared at the text like it might change if I waited. It didn't, of course, it just sat there daring me to answer. Another bubble popped up before I could reply. Tomorrow, 7, you pick the place if you don't trust me. That line made me laugh out loud, one sharp, ugly sound. Trust her. Right. I screenshotted the texts and sent them to him. Is this actually happening or is she bluffing? He replied within a minute. I asked her, she agreed, I want to hear both of you. I read that 4 times, then locked my phone to stop shaking. My grandmother watched me pace from the doorway. You're wearing a path in my floor, she muttered, folding her arms. I told her about the planned meeting, my voice too fast. She listened without interrupting, thumb rubbing one knuckle. Are you going because you want answers or to win? She asked. That question stopped me cold. I don't even know the difference anymore, I admitted. She nodded like she understood more than she wanted to. If you go, remember this, she added, stepping closer. You're not there to convince her of your pain, you're there to hear what she does with the truth. I barely slept that night. Every possible version of tomorrow played in my head. In some, she cried and admitted everything and begged. In others, she tore me apart so smoothly I ended up apologizing. I knew myself well enough to know either outcome could break me. The restaurant I picked was small and noisy. On purpose. If things went bad, at least our mess would dissolve into the background hum. I got there 10 minutes early and picked a table near the back. My leg bounced so hard the chair squeaked. Mark arrived first, right on time, jacket half buttoned. His eyes swept the room until he spotted me. He approached with that careful walk of someone carrying a glass inside his ribcage. Hey, he gr. Edith, voice low, hands jammed into his pockets. You good to do this? Define good, I replied, fingers curled around my water glass. He let out a breath that sounded like agreement. Fair enough, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. I told her we're going to talk like adults, not on a stage. I didn't trust that for a second, but I appreciated the intention. We sat in a tight silence as we waited. He kept checking the entrance without meaning to. I watched the condensation drip down my glass and counted drops. Every time the door opened, my shoulders jumped. I hated how much power that entrance still had over my body. She walked in 7 minutes late. Not late enough to be rude, just enough to be dramatic. Her eyes scanned the room until she found our table. I watched her straighten her posture and smooth her shirt. The performance started before she even reached us. Thank you for agreeing to this, she began, sliding into the seat beside him. She did not look at me first, she focused on him. Her hand went to his arm and rested there, tender and shaky. I'm glad you're both here, she added, finally turning toward me. Her smile trembled just enough to look real. I felt my whole body go tense. Not because she looked upset, but because I recognized that expression. That was her hurt but graceful face, the one she used at funerals and holiday arguments. I had thrown myself against that mask my whole life. This time, at least, someone else was sitting close enough to see the seams. Mark lifted his menu, then set it down untouched. I want to be clear about why we're here, he said. We're not reenacting the other night, we're getting clarity. His gaze moved from her to me and back. I've seen things I didn't know existed, I have questions. For a second her calm slipped. Her fingers twitched on his sleeve, then stilled. What things, she asked, eyes narrowing just a little. There it was, that defensive edge under the soft tone. He didn't dance around it. The messages, he answered, leaning back slightly. The ones between you and Riley going back years. He tapped his phone on the table for emphasis. I went through them, I read them twice. The color drained from her face faster than I expected. You went into my private conversations, she snapped, turning fully toward him. What gave you that right? Her voice climbed sharp enough that the table beside us glanced over. He lifted his hands a little, palms out. Her phone, her history, not yours, I asked for her side. She looked at me like I'd committed some elaborate betrayal. You showed him our texts, she demanded, eyebrows raised high. I shrugged, though my heart was pounding. You used them to build your version, I answered. I used them to show him mine. She let out a short, disbelieving laugh. You have always twisted things, she muttered, shaking her head. You take every mistake I made and turn it into a weapon. Her eyes glistened as she looked back at him. This is what I was afraid of, she wants to destroy what we have. Mark didn't flinch at the accusation. He kept his gaze steady. Nobody forced me to meet with her, he said quietly. I'm here because what I read didn't match what you told me. That sentence hung between them like a hammer. I watched her dig for a new angle. I told you there were gaps, she insisted, voice hitching slightly. I told you her father made things hard, that he turned her against me. She pressed her thumb into the table like she needed an anchor. I never lied to you, Mark, I just couldn't talk about every painful detail. He turned the phone so the screen faced her. Here's what you told me, he replied. You said you called, texted, showed up and got shut out. His thumb moved, opening one of the screenshots he'd saved. Now I see a teenager begging for contact while nothing comes back. She glanced at the screen, then away as if it burned. I was not in a good place back then, she murmured. I was drowning, I couldn't be the mother she needed. She reached for his hand again, but he didn't take it this time. That doesn't mean I didn't care, I cared too much and froze. I almost laughed because that line was new even for her. Is that what you're going with now? I asked. That you loved me so deeply you forgot to answer your phone. My voice came out calm, which somehow made it hit harder. She threw me a look like I'd spit on the floor. Can we not make this a courtroom? She snapped. I am trying to explain something complicated, not defend myself on trial. Her chest rose and fell faster as she wiped under one eye. I had a child in a tense situation and no support. I did the best I could with what I had. There it was. The old standby. I leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes on her. Your best looked a lot like disappearing, I answered. And then telling everyone you had no choice. Mark cut in before we could spiral straight into shouting. Forget the distant years for a second, he said. Let's start with something recent. He swiped to the messages from the day of the engagement party. Why tell people she chose not to be in your life? She stiffened, visibly bracing herself. I never said that, she replied, eyes flashing. I said she pulled away, which she did. She gestured at me with one hand, almost knocking her water. She barely visits, she doesn't call regularly, she keeps me at arm's length. That's present tense, I cut in. We're talking about how we got there. I pointed at the phone he still held. You left out the years before that, when I ran after you like an idiot. My voice cracked on that last word, I didn't care. She swung her head toward me, teeth clenched. You think you're the only one who hurt, she demanded. You think dropping off your father's radar and then losing him was easy for me. Her fingers dug into the edge of the table until they whitened. I had to watch from a distance while my child grew up hating me. If you were watching, you could have walked closer, I shot back. I could feel people glancing over now, but I did lower my volume. You didn't even show up when he died. That word still tasted awful on my tongue. You learned about it and decided to stay home. Mark's head jerked at that. He turned to her, expression sharp and disbelieving. You knew when it happened, he asked, voice low. His shoulders tensed like he already knew the answer. You told me you found out years later. Her lips parted, then closed again. For once, she seemed legitimately lost for words. I didn't know all the details, she tried. I heard he was sick and then gone soon after. I couldn't handle that environment. Her choice of words made my stomach twist. There it is, I muttered, sitting back. That environment, my home, my grief, too messy for you. I laughed softly, humorless and tired. At least you're finally saying it out loud, not just texting it. My hands shook under the table even as my voice stayed steady. Mark looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. You texted that to her, he asked, eyes fixed on her face. You wrote that you couldn't be around it because it was too hard. He blew out a slow breath, chest rising on the inhale. That's not the story you gave me. She reached for him again, desperate now. I didn't want you to think I was heartless, she blurted. I was dealing with so much, we were building a new life, I had a baby. Her words tumbled out in a rush, uneven and frantic. If I had stepped back into that, I might not have made it out. You made it out just fine, I replied, voice flat. I watched the photos, new house, vacations, smiles, no sign of fallout. I leaned in, not to intimidate her but to stay grounded. The only one who didn't make it out was him. I got to bury him alone. The table went so quiet my ears rang. She looked between us back and forth like a cornered animal. For years I was the villain in every story, she whispered. I was the homewrecker, the runaway, the selfish one. She lifted her chin, jaw trembling. I chose myself once, and you've both decided that cancels everything. You didn't just choose yourself, I said. You chose a whole different family and pretended the first one didn't count. The words came out before I could soften them. That's not self-care, that's abandonment with a nicer outfit. I felt heat rise in my face, but I didn't look away. Mark rapped his knuckles against the table once, sharp. Stop, he said, not to shut us up but to reset the room. We're circling the same accusation, I need a straight answer now. He turned fully toward her, shoulders squared. Why did you never show me those messages? Her eyes flashed with fresh anger. Because my history with her is mine, she snapped. I didn't want every mistake dissected under a microscope. She shook her head hard, hair shifting around her face. I knew if I laid it all out, you'd walk. He watched her quiet, like he was waiting for the real answer. That's part of it, he said finally. But not all of it. He held her gaze in a way I'd never seen before. What else were you protecting? Be honest for once. Something shifted in her expression then. The outrage faded, replaced by something smaller and far more tired. She stared at the salt shaker between us for a long beat. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, almost flat. I was protecting the life I built after I left, she admitted. My chest went tight hearing those words. Not because they were shocking, but because they were finally unfiltered. Spell that out, I said, before she could retreat into vague language. Her eyes met mine, and for a second I saw raw guilt. Then she looked back at him and answered like I hadn't spoken. When I moved out, I had nothing, she said. I was broke, scared and convinced if I stayed I would crumble. She swallowed hard, fingers worrying her napkin into shreds. Then I met you at work, and you offered stability and love and a way out. Her voice thickened on the last part. He didn't argue, just listened, jaw set. But there was a catch, she continued, still staring at the table. You wanted a fresh start, you were clear about that from the beginning. She glanced up at him, eyes apologetic. You said you couldn't handle drama with an ex, you wanted something clean. Mark's eyes widened as he tried to interrupt. I never asked you to abandon your kid, he cut in. I told you I didn't want to step into an active war zone with your ex. He looked stunned that she had twisted that boundary into this. I thought that meant no screaming phone calls at midnight, not total disappearance. She lifted both hands defensively. I know you didn't say it outright, she insisted. But I knew how fragile everything was then. I knew if I showed up with court battles and constant arguments, you would run. Her chest rose and fell faster, breath shallow. I had to choose what would survive, something was going to break either way. So you picked the future that benefited you most, I said. That's what you're actually describing. I kept my voice even, but my pulse slammed in my ears. You gambled that I'd be alright tucked away with Dad and Grandma, while you focused on your new world. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I told myself you'd have a roof and stability there, she responded. I told myself you were resilient and he adored you. She looked at me with an almost pleading expression. I thought one day, when things calmed down, I'd come back and knit it together. Her mouth twisted. I just kept pushing that day further and further. There it was. The thing she never said out loud, finally sitting in the middle of the table. She hadn't stumbled into losing me. She'd de-weighed options and chosen the one where I became background. Mark sat back as if the chair had moved under him. He stared at her like he'd never seen her before. So you knowingly prioritized this life over being present for your child, he said slowly. You assumed she'd be all right with whatever scraps you had left later. He rubbed his thumb along the edge of his ring, twisting it. You didn't tell me that when you cried about being kept away. His tone wasn't raised, but every word landed heavy. She shook her head hard, eyes brimming again. It's not that simple, she muttered. I was terrified, I was young, I had no idea how to juggle everything. She reached toward him again, like contact could fix this. I made bad choices because I was desperate, not because I didn't care. I believe you were scared, I said quietly. I even believe you loved me in your own way. Her head snapped toward me, surprised at the concession. But love doesn't cancel out what you did, it just explains why it hurt in a special flavor. My hands trembled against my thighs under the table. Mark turned his ring one more time, then slid it off. Just like that. He set it on the table between them, metal clicking against wood. Her eyes dropped to it, then shot back up fast. What are you doing? She asked, voice going thin. I need to pause, he replied. Not dramatic, not cruel, just final. I can't unhear what I just heard. He glanced at the screenshots glowing on his screen. I wouldn't have proposed if I'd known you made that kind of calculation. Her face crumpled in a way I'd never seen. You're throwing away our future over mistakes I made years ago, she gasped. We built a home, we raised a child together. One broken chapter doesn't erase all of that. Tears spilled down her cheeks now, messy and unposed. You told me you'd stand by me. This isn't about punishing you for the past, he answered. It's about realizing the person I'm engaged to edits reality when it suits her. His voice cracked once on the word engaged. I can't commit to a lifetime with someone if I don't trust the ground under my feet. He glanced briefly at me before finishing, or the story my kid will be told. She reached for the ring, then pulled her hand back like it might burn. You're both ganging up on me, she whispered. Do you have any idea how lonely that feels? She looked between us with wild desperation. You, of all people, should understand what it is to be left. That one hit, I won't lie. My throat tightened because she wasn't wrong about the feeling. Yes, I said softly. I know exactly what it feels like to sit in a room and watch someone choose a future that doesn't include you. I let the implication hang there like fog. You taught me. She flinched like the words had physical weight. For a moment, none of us moved. The restaurant noise swelled and dipped around us, muffled. Mark cleared his throat, breaking the spell. I'm going to take some Tim. He said, pushing his chair back. She grabbed his wrist before he could stand fully. Don't walk out of here with her, she pleaded, jerking her chin toward me. Please don't prove every fear I had right. He looked down at her hand, then at me, then at the ring on the table. I'm not walking out with anyone, he answered. I'm just walking out. He gently removed her fingers from his arm and stood. For a second, I thought he might say something to me too. He just held my gaze for a beat, eyes full of apology and exhaustion. Then he nodded once, like a quiet thank you for the truth, and walked away, leaving the ring between us. The silence that followed felt like pressure in my ears. She stared at the little circle of metal, breathing unevenly. When she finally looked up, her expression had hardened again. This is what you wanted, she hissed. You couldn't stand seeing me happy, so you tore it down. That's what you're going with, I asked. Not that your own words did this, not that your choices finally caught up. I leaned back, feeling my shoulders press into the chair. You honestly believe you were going to skate past all of this forever? My voice trembled, but I didn't look away. You all act like I had infinite options, she snapped. Like there was some perfect path where nobody got hurt. She swiped at her cheeks again, more angry than sad now. I broke things, I get it, that doesn't make you innocent here. Her stare was so sharp it almost felt physical. I opened my mouth to argue, then stopped. She wasn't entirely wrong. I hadn't handled the party with grace, I hadn't kept my voice down. I'd chosen public combustion over quiet confrontation. Owning that didn't magically make her the victim, but it did complicate the picture. I never claimed I did everything right, I said slowly. I reacted in the worst place at the worst time. I laced my fingers together on the table so she'd see the shaking. I own that, I can apologize for how I did it. I took a breath, I won't apologize for being furious at what you did. Her jaw clenched, then relaxed in a slow, painful motion. So what now? She asked, sounding suddenly tired. You got your say, he walked. The internet thinks you're unstable, where does that leave us? Her eyes searched my face for something I didn't have. For once, I honestly don't know what role you want from me. That question hung in the air longer than anything else that evening. I realized I didn't have a clear job description for her either. Mother, stranger, cautionary tale, some messed up mix of all three. I don't want a performance, I answered finally. I just want you to stop rewriting my life to make yours cleaner. She looked down at her hands, fingers finally still. That might be the only thing I don't know how to do, she murmured. It sounded more like a confession than anything else she'd said. For a second, I saw the woman she might have been if she hadn't run. Then the wall slid back into place behind her eyes. I need to go, she added, voice going formal. I have a child at home who's going to ask where I've been. The way she emphasized child made my stomach twist again. I could hear the unspoken part, one who still depends on me, one I didn't drop. She stood without waiting for my response. Take the ring, I said, nodding toward the table. Her gaze flicked down, then away. I don't know if it's mine anymore, she whispered. She left it there between the watermarks and napkin crumbs. Then walked out, shoulders rigid, head high, not looking back. I sat there for a long time after she disappeared from view. My reflection stared back at me in the dark window, pale and stunned. There was no rush of triumph, no clean satisfaction. Just a heavy, shaky quiet in my chest. I had wanted the truth, and now I had it, sitting on the table like that ring. The first text landed before I reached the end of the block. Your mother is hysterical, what did you say this time? I didn't even know which cousin it was at first. The screen glared up at me while cars rolled past. I slid the phone back in my pocket and kept walking. By the time I got home, the family chat was on fire. 100 unread messages, maybe more, all stacked together. I opened it because I never learn on the first try. Screens of people arguing about a night they hadn't seen. My name popped up over and over, always with extra punctuation. She shattered her own engagement, unbelievable. Some kids never grow up, they just lash out. Somebody needs to get that girl help. Mixed in, there were a few softer lines I almost missed. She has her reasons, you don't know everything, back off. My aunt pinged me directly while I scrolled. Please don't answer in the group, call me. I ignored that and scrolled further up, jaw clenched. There it was, a screenshot of her long post. Engagement postponed while our family heals from recent betrayal. Betrayal. Nice and vague, just enough to invite theories. Under it, relatives had already chosen sides like it was a sport. Praying hands, broken heart emojis, comments about resilience and strength. Nothing about the ring left on the table between us. A new text from her came in separate thread. You should be ashamed of yourself. Another one followed before I could blink. I just lost the man I love because you can't let go of the past. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at those lines. Wow, I muttered, thumb hovering above the screen. Not I'm gutted by what I did, just look what you broke. Another message. You twisted everything, you ambushed me in front of him, are you proud? It was like watching someone sprint away from their own reflection. I typed erase, typed again. Every draft sounded like a long essay I'd already written in my head. Finally, I settled on 4 words. You did this, not me. I hit send and tossed the phone onto the blanket. It buzzed again immediately. You've wanted to ruin my happiness for years. You succeeded, congratulations. You are toxic and I don't owe you anything anymore. The last line stung in a way I didn't expect. I picked the phone back up slowly. I read the last message 3 times, letting each word hit. Then I scrolled up through the thread one more time. Everything from the dress code text to now, a full arc. Invitations, surface smiles, then this. I didn't answer her. Instead, I held my thumb on her contact until options popped up. My pulse pounded in my ears while I hovered there. Part of me hoped a new message would arrive and break the spell. Nothing came. I hit mute first. It felt like dipping a toe in water before jumping. Silence, no more notifications, no more little previews popping up. My heart didn't slow down, my chest still hurt. Muting wasn't enough. I pressed her name again and slid to block. A warning flashed like the phone was asking if I was serious. Are you sure you want to stop receiving messages from this contact? I stared at the sentence that sounded way calmer than I felt. Then I pressed confirm and watched her number disappear from my future. I expected to feel triumphant. I didn't. I just felt empty and shaky and older than I was. My grandmother knocked on my door before I could spiral too far. You want tea or do you want to be alone? She asked. Both, I answered, which made no sense. She came in anyway and sat down without turning on the light. We didn't make eye contact, which actually made it easier to talk. Did you do what you needed to do? She asked after a minute. Her voice had that tired softness it only gets on hard nights. I think I just cut her off, I said. It sounded unreal out loud, like we were discussing someone else. She's calling me toxic because her fiancé walked. I rubbed my thumb over a loose thread on the blanket. I pressed block before I chickened out. My grandmother exhaled long and slow. Sometimes survival looks mean from the outside, she murmured. She reached over and patted my leg once, brief and firm. It doesn't mean it isn't survival. I swallowed hard at that. Her phone chimed from her pocket. She pulled it out, squinted, then clicked her tongue. They've moved on to talking about church now, she said. So I guess the crisis is downgrading in real time. It should have been funny, it was. Are they dragging me? I asked, even though I knew the answer. Some are, she admitted. Some are staying quiet, which is its own kind of answer. She tucked the phone away and looked at me properly. What matters is what you do with all this now, not their commentary. After she left, I lay on my back and stared at the ceiling. The ringtone sounded so loud in the quiet that my body jerked. Unknown number again, same one from before. For once, I was relieved to see it. I answered before it flipped to voicemail. Hey, Mark's voice came through, rough around the edges. I sat up, heart speeding. You okay? I asked, surprised at myself for caring. I've had better days, he said, letting out a strained laugh. I wanted you to hear it from me before the rumors get worse. I braced without realizing it. We're calling it off, he continued, no build-up, no cushioning. There's no date, no new plan, I'm staying at a hotel with my kid for now. I pictured his daughter in a bland room with an overnight bag. My stomach twisted in that same old way. I'm sorry, I said, because what else do you say to that? He made a small sound, somewhere between agreement and frustration. I'm not calling for sympathy, he added. I just didn't want you waking up to hear I went back like nothing happened. That detail mattered more than I expected. How's she taking it? I asked, meaning his daughter. He paused long enough that I knew it wasn't good. Confused, he answered. She keeps asking what you did to make Mom's mad. I closed my eyes, heat crawling up my neck. I didn't tell her your version, he rushed to clarify. I just told her grown-ups messed up and we're figuring it out. He let that hang there for a beat. I don't want her carrying the weight of our choices. The way he said our made something loosen in my chest. I appreciate that, I said quietly. I really do. I pulled my knees up, balancing the phone between my shoulder and ear. If she ever reaches out to me, I swear I won't unload everything on her. I'll tell her just enough to keep her from thinking she's the cause. Funny you say that, he replied. She asked for your number. My grip tightened. I told her I'd check with you first. His tone carried a cautious kind of hope. A part of me lit up at the thought. Another part panicked so hard my palms went damp. I don't want to sneak behind her back with her own kid, I said. It's already messy enough. I chewed the side of my cheek thinking. How about this, he offered. If she finds you online on her own, that's outside my control. You decide what you're comfortable sharing, and you tell her to come to me if she's scared. He sounded exhausted but steady. I'm not asking you to be her therapist, just not her ghost story. I can do that much, I said. That felt like a line I could hold without breaking. We sat in a strange quiet for a second. I don't hate you, by the way, I added, blurting it out. I know I dragged your life into this, but I don't blame you for believing her. I don't hate you either, he replied. If anything, I hate how long it took me to ask questions. There was a shuffling sound, like he shifted on a bed. Take care of yourself, okay? Let the internet say whatever it wants. He hung up before I could answer that part. For a few hours, nothing new came in. I almost relaxed. Then a notification from a social app slid across my screen. Message request. Username I didn't recognize. I opened it and froze when I saw the profile picture. Her daughter. Younger than me by a decade, familiar eyes, crooked smile. My chest clenched so hard I had to sit down again. Her first message was only 3 words. Are you okay? That undid me more than all the insults from adults. I stared at the question until it blurred on the screen. Then I wiped my face and typed back slowly. Not really, but I'm breathing, are you? Little bubbles popped in and out as she typed. I don't know, her second message came. Mom's been crying and yelling and saying you ruined everything. You're blocked on her phone now, I found your name through Dad's contacts. She's calling you dangerous, I don't get it. Dangerous? That one was new. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, choosing each word like it was sharp. I did something loud that she's using to explain all the hurt, I wrote. That doesn't make me a monster, it also doesn't make her safe right now. Another pause on her end, longer this time. Finally, more text. I heard you yelling that night, she admitted. I was in the hallway when you walked past. You looked like you couldn't breathe. I exhaled like I'd been holding air since the party. I couldn't, I replied. That doesn't mean you have to pick me over her. I let that sit a second before continuing. You're allowed to love her and still see what she did. She sent a single crying emoji, then a whole paragraph. She told me you hate us, it read. She says you want to break our home like yours got broken. She says you've always been jealous of me. I don't want that to be true, but I don't know what to believe. I felt something in me snap at the jealousy part. Not toward the kid, toward the narrative. I don't hate you, I wrote, fingers hitting the screen harder. I resented how invisible I felt watching your happy photos. That's not your fault, you were a child in pictures, not the director. Her reply came fast, like she'd been waiting for that. So you don't want me gone, she asked. That question hurt worse than any accusation. No, I answered, throat tight. I want you safe, even if that means staying far from me. My friends say I should cut her off, she wrote next. They say she's toxic and I'll end up like you. The like you stung and made me laugh at the same time. Please don't follow your friends' scripts yet, I replied. Just watch what she does, not what she posts. What do I do when she talks about you, she asked. She keeps telling the story like you're crazy, and she tried her best. She looks so sad when she says it, I feel guilty even questioning it. That confession sounded way too familiar. It was like reading my own teenage brain on the screen. You ask yourself one thing, I typed. Does this story give her a reason to change anything? If the answer is no every time, it's not a story, it's a shield. I stared at that for a second, realizing I needed that line Mize. LF. Also, find an adult who isn't either of us to talk to, I added. Like a counselor at school, she wrote. Or my aunt. Yes, I replied. Tell them you're stuck in the middle and you need someone neutral. If they're good at their job, they'll keep you out of the crossfire. She sent a small okay and a heart. Then another short message. I'm sorry about your dad, she wrote. My throat closed up so tight I had to swallow twice. I saw his picture in Grandma's house, he looked kind. Thank you, I typed, hands shaking. He tried very hard to be everything at once. I hesitated on the next sentence. You deserved two parents who did that too, I wrote finally. Even if that's not how it turned out. I have to go, she added after a minute. Mom is coming down the hall, I don't want her to see this. My chest knotted at the idea of her hiding in her own room. Clear the thread if that keeps you safer, I replied. I'll still be here if you need me again. The typing bubbles appeared one last time. Thank you for answering, she wrote. He never talks about you, now I know you're real. That line hit harder than I expected. Then she went offline and the chat went still. I put my phone face down and stared at the ceiling again. There was no neat label for what I was to her now. Not quite sister, not quite stranger, definitely not enemy. Something in between, held together by Wi-Fi and a shared ache. It was strangely grounding and heartbreaking at the same time. A few days passed in a weird, slow blur. Work dishes, half-hearted streaming shows I barely tracked. Every time my phone buzzed, my shoulders jumped. Most of it was nothing big. Spam calls, app updates, a couple of friends checking in with cautious texts. One friend finally sent a screenshot from the engagement video thread. People are still roasting you in the comments, she wrote. Do you want me to report stuff or just ignore? I clicked the link before I could stop myself. The view count had climbed, but the clip was the same. Me jaw locked, voice raised, eyes blazing near the microphone. Her slightly behind, hand reaching out, face twisted in hurt. Someone had slowed it down and added dramatic music. The top comment read, "This is why some people shouldn't be invited to events." Under it, someone else wrote, "Therapy immediately." I watched the whole thing once, then again with the sound off. I tried to look at myself like a stranger would. Angry, uncontrolled, embarrassing. All of that was true, at least on the surface. It wasn't the whole truth, but strangers don't care about context. I backed out and answered my friend. Report anything that gets violent, I wrote. Everything else is just noise. My thumb hovered before I added one more line. I'm going to tell the story properly somewhere else. That night, I brought it up with my grandmother. We sat at the table while she sorted mail into small piles. I'm thinking about writing it all out, I said. Online, where I don't have to argue with every cousin. She looked up over her reading glasses, skeptical and curious. Like a diary, she asked. More like a public train wreck, I answered. A place where strangers judge me instead of people who share my last name. She snorted despite herself. At least you're honest about it. She shuffled the envelopes once more, then nodded. If you do it, don't make yourself a saint, she warned. People sniff that out and stop listening. I knew she was right. That's not a problem I have, I muttered. Later, I opened my laptop and stared at the blank post box. The cursor blinked like it was tapping its foot. At the top, where the title goes, I started typing. I blew up at my mom's engagement party and now her fiancé left. Too long, but it felt close. I trimmed it. I blew up at my mom's engagement party, now everything's on fire. Closer. I changed it one more time. I snapped at my mom's engagement party because she erased me. That felt as honest as it was going to get. I took a deep breath and started from the beginning. Not with her childhood, not with excuses, not with a list of her sins. With the moment the glass slipped in my hand and every face turned. With the way my chest felt like it would split open if I stayed seated. I wrote about the toast, the sentence, the hallway. I wrote about the phone calls, the texts, the coffee with him. I wrote about the restaurant with the ring on the table. I wrote about the half-sister hiding in her room, phone glowing in the dark. I did not clean myself up, I kept my worst moments in. Every few paragraphs I stopped to breathe. Sometimes I cringed at my own choices in black and white. Sometimes I caught myself trying to soften her actions too much. I kept pulling myself back to the same rule. Tell it like you weren't trying to win a case. By the time I reached the present, my fingers ached. The post was long, messy, and probably too detailed for half the internet. But reading it back, it sounded like someone I recognized. Not a hero, not a pure victim, just a person who finally cracked. I hovered over the submit button, heart thundering. I thought about deleting the whole thing instead. Closing the laptop, going to bed, letting everyone else edit me forever. I thought about my father, eyes tired, phone turned face down. I thought about a younger girl, thumb flying over her screen, asking if I was okay. I thought about my mother, somewhere across town, telling a room that she had only ever done her best. Then I clicked post. The screen flickered as the page refreshed and my words locked in. Somewhere strangers would start tearing through them, judging every sentence. Somewhere my side of the story finally existed outside my head. For the first time, I wasn't asking her to believe me, I was choosing to believe myself.